She held the ultrasound over the flame and watched her baby's first photo turn to ash. Not because she didn't want the child, but because she loved a man who was never supposed to be hers. What she didn't know, the mafia boss had already seen that scan, and what he did next made his own family fear him. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days in Chicago. Naomi Carter stood alone in her Bronzeville apartment, watching water stream down the window like tears the sky couldn't hold back anymore. Her hand pressed flat against her stomach. 5 weeks. That's what the doctor said. 5 weeks of something growing inside her that she never planned for. 5 weeks of a secret she couldn't keep. But that wasn't why her hands were shaking tonight. No. Her hands were shaking because of what she heard 4 hours ago at a charity gala in River North. Words spoken by a woman who didn't even know Naomi existed. The Kang engagement is finally happening. Can you believe it? June Sok and the Park heiress, their families have been planning this for years. The woman had laughed, sipped champagne, moved on to the next piece of gossip like she hadn't just torn Naomi's entire world apart. Naomi had stood frozen near the bathroom hallway, her rented dress suddenly feeling cheap against her skin. She waited until no one was watching, then she walked out the back entrance, caught a cab, and rode home in silence. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just sat in the back seat and felt something inside her go quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before everything breaks. Now she stood in her kitchen with a single candle burning on the counter. The ultrasound photo rested between her fingers. A tiny shape, a quiet heartbeat captured in grayscale, proof that her life had already changed, whether the world allowed it or not. But the world wasn't going to allow it. That much was clear now. Kang Jun-sok belonged to a different universe, a universe of power, strategy, and alliances sealed with signatures and bloodlines. She was never part of that equation. She was just a woman he met outside a community center on the South Side, a woman who volunteered after long shifts because helping people felt better than going home to an empty apartment. He watched her that first night. Didn't speak, just watched with those dark eyes that seemed to memorize details no one else noticed. When he finally spoke to her, weeks later, his voice was calm, careful, like every word had been weighed before it left his mouth. "You come here often. Every Tuesday. Why?" She had shrugged. "Because someone should." He didn't smile, but something shifted in his expression, like she had given the right answer to a question he'd been asking for years. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of guarded conversations that slowly became late-night calls. 8 months of stolen dinners and quiet restaurants where no one asked questions. 8 months of falling for a man who never fully explained what he did, but whose presence made powerful people lower their voices. Naomi wasn't stupid. She knew there were shadows around him. She just convinced herself the light between them was strong enough to matter. She was wrong. The engagement proved it. The woman at the gala proved it. The silence from June Sok, who hadn't called in 5 days, proved it. Naomi lifted the ultrasound toward the candle flame. Her throat tightened, her vision blurred, but her hand stayed steady. "If the world doesn't want the truth," she told herself, "then I'll remove myself from it." The edge of the photo touched the fire. The paper caught. She watched the flame climb toward the tiny heartbeat image, watched the corners curl and blacken, watched the proof of what they created disappear into smoke. When it was gone, she dropped the ash into the sink and ran cold water over it. Then she stood there for a long time, hands gripping the counter, breathing slow, telling herself this was the right thing, the strong thing, the only thing. She would change her number tomorrow. She would request a transfer at work. She would disappear so completely that Kang Jun-sok would never have to choose between her and his legacy. Because she already knew what he would choose. Everyone always chose the legacy. What Naomi didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, a man sat alone in a penthouse office. In front of him lay a single document, a copy of the same ultrasound she had just burned. Kang Jun-sok stared at the image for a long time, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable, the kind of stillness that made his own men step back when they entered the room. He had people everywhere. Hospitals, clinics, offices. Nothing around him happened without being seen. The appointment had been flagged within hours. The scan had reached his desk before Naomi even left the building. And now, according to the latest report, she was pulling away, canceling follow-ups, changing her patterns, preparing to vanish. Jun-sok lifted the document down slowly. His second-in-command stood near the door, waiting for orders. But Jun-sok said nothing. He simply pulled out his phone and sent one message to his family's head of operations. "The Kang engagement is off. Do not contact me about it again." Then he stood, walked to the window, and looked out over a city that feared his name. Somewhere in Chicago, Naomi thought she was protecting him. She had no idea what she just started. If you've ever felt invisible to someone who should have seen you, stay with me. This story is about to turn, and what this mafia boss does next will shock everyone, including his own family. Don't scroll away. You'll regret missing what comes next. The Kang family estate sat high above downtown Los Angeles like a fortress disguised as luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble floors, art pieces worth more than most people's homes. Everything inside that penthouse whispered one message: we own what we want, we control what we touch. But tonight, the air felt different. Tonight, even the guards stationed outside the private conference room stood a little straighter, a little stiffer, like they could sense something was about to shift. Inside, 4 people waited around a long oak table. Kang Min-jun, Jun-sok's father, sat at the head, 71 years old, silver hair combed back with precision, eyes that had watched men beg and never blinked. He built this empire from nothing, and he intended to see it multiply before he died. Beside him sat his wife, Soo-yeon, elegant, composed. The kind of woman who smiled at charity events while quietly deciding which rivals needed to disappear. She handled the family's public image and private strategies with equal skill. 2 uncles filled the remaining chairs, both loyal, both dangerous, both convinced that tonight's meeting was a formality. The engagement to the Park family heiress had been arranged for 3 years. Contracts reviewed, announcements prepared, a merger of 2 powerful bloodlines that would double their reach across the Pacific. All they needed was Jun-sok's cooperation. And why wouldn't he cooperate? He always had before. Quiet, obedient, strategic, the perfect heir. The door opened at exactly 9 p.m. Kang Jun-sok walked in wearing a dark suit that cost more than most cars. His face revealed nothing. His movements were calm, measured, like a man who had already decided the outcome of a conversation no one else knew was coming. He took his seat across from his father without greeting anyone. Min-jun studied his son for a moment. Then he nodded to Soo-yeon. She slid a folder across the table. "The Park family has confirmed the engagement date," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "June 15th. The ceremony will take place in Seoul. Media coverage has been arranged, selective, of course, only outlets we control." She flipped open the folder, revealing photos of a young woman, beautiful, polished, the daughter of a shipping magnate whose fleet moved goods, legal and otherwise, across 3 continents. Jiyeon is accomplished, Yale-educated, fluent in 4 languages. Her family's connections in South Korea will open doors we've been trying to unlock for a decade. One of the uncles leaned forward. "This alliance secures our position for the next 30 years. The Park family brings legitimacy, political protection, access to ports we've never been able to touch." Min-jun finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of a man who wasn't used to being questioned. "The announcement goes public next week. You'll fly to Seoul in 3 days to meet Jiyeon's family formally. Everything has been arranged." He said it like the matter was settled, like June Sock's agreement was already written in stone. The room waited. June Sock hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His eyes stayed fixed on the folder in front of him, but he hadn't opened it. Seconds passed. The silence grew heavy. Finally, June Sock looked up, not at his father, at his mother. "Who told you I agreed?" 5 words. Soft, calm, almost polite, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Soo-yeon's smile flickered, just for a moment. "June Sock, this has been planned for—" "I asked a question." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Minjun's jaw tightened. "You will not speak to your mother that way." June Sock turned to face his father directly. "And you will not arrange my life without my consent. Not anymore." One of the uncles shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the nephew they knew, the heir who followed orders, the son who understood duty. This was something else entirely. Minjun leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think you have a choice here. You think this family survives because we chase feelings? Marriages are strategy. Alliances are survival. Whatever distraction you found—" June Sock's phone buzzed against the table. He glanced at the screen. One message from his most trusted man in Chicago. One word. Gone. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, hardened, locked into place. Naomi had started running. She changed her number, missed her hospital appointments, requested a work transfer. She was trying to disappear from him, from the baby, from everything they built in secret. And she was doing it because he believed he would choose this room over her. June Sock stood slowly. His mother opened her mouth to speak. He cut her off with 5 words that made his uncles exchange nervous glances. "This meeting is over. Permanently." Minjun slammed his palm against the table. "Sit down. We are not finished." June Sock didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at his father with the same cold focus he used when closing deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "The engagement is canceled. The Park family will be informed tonight. And if anyone in this room contacts the woman involved, if anyone sends people near her, investigates her, or threatens her in any way—" He paused. The room held its breath. "You will answer to me, not as your son, as something else entirely." No one moved. No one spoke. For 50 years, Minjun had controlled this family with an iron grip. He had survived wars, betrayals, and federal investigations. He had never, not once, been threatened by his own blood. Until now. June Sock turned and walked toward the door. His mother's voice followed him, sharp, desperate. "You would destroy everything we built? For what? Some woman who doesn't even belong in your world?" June Sock stopped. His hand rested on the door handle. He didn't turn around. "She's carrying my child." The words landed like a bomb in a silent room. "And she belongs in my world because I say she does." Then he walked out, and the Kang family sat in stunned silence, realizing for the first time that the heir they raised had become something they couldn't control. Outside, the Los Angeles skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. June Sock stood by the elevator, phone already pressed to his ear. "Get the jet ready. Chicago, tonight." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, your father—" "Did I stutter?" "No, sir. Chicago, tonight." June Sock ended the call and stared at the city below. Naomi thought she could disappear, thought burning that photo meant burning what they had, thought walking away would protect everyone. She was wrong, because the one thing even a mafia boss couldn't control was whether he would let her back in. But he wasn't going to let her vanish. Not now. Not ever. Naomi had 72 hours to erase herself. She started with the phone, Standing in her kitchen at 6 a.m., she pulled the SIM card out, snapped it in half, and dropped the pieces into a glass of water. Then she walked 3 blocks to a convenience store and bought a prepaid burner with cash. No contract, no name, no trace. The old Naomi, the one who believed in love, in second chances, in fairy tales where the powerful man chooses the ordinary woman, that version of her died last night. This Naomi had a plan. Disappear completely, quietly, before Junesock's world swallowed her whole. By noon, she had submitted her transfer request. Her supervisor at the logistics firm near O'Hare looked confused when she walked into his office. Milwaukee? Naomi, you've been here 4 years. You're up for a promotion next quarter. Why would you... Family emergency. She said it flat, final, the kind of tone that didn't invite follow-up questions. Her supervisor studied her face for a long moment. Something was wrong. He could see it. But Naomi's expression made clear she wasn't going to explain. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll process it today. You can start at the satellite office Monday." "Thank you." She walked out without looking back. 1 down, 3 to go. The apartment was next. Naomi had lived in that Bronzeville unit for 6 years. It wasn't fancy. Cracked tiles in the bathroom, a radiator that clanked every winter, neighbors who played music too loud on weekends. But it was hers. The first place she ever rented with her own money. The first place that felt like home after years of bouncing between relatives and temporary situations. Now it felt like a crime scene she needed to flee. She called her landlord and gave 30 days' notice. Then she started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. Clothes, documents, her mother's old Bible, a photo of her grandmother. Everything else could stay. Everything else could rot. By the time the sun set, half her life sat in cardboard boxes near the door, ready to be loaded into her car, ready to be driven somewhere no one would think to look. But the hospital was the hardest part. Naomi sat in her car outside Mercy General for 20 minutes before she could make herself walk inside. The same fluorescent lights, the same antiseptic smell, the same hallway where she had stood alone 3 days ago, staring at an ultrasound image that changed everything. Now, she was here to cancel her follow-up appointment, to tell them she wouldn't be coming back, to erase the last official proof that the pregnancy existed. The receptionist barely looked up when Naomi approached the desk. "I need to cancel my appointment and enroll myself from the patient registry." "Reason?" Naomi's throat tightened. No longer relevant. The receptionist typed something into her computer. "All right, you're removed. If you change your mind, I won't." Naomi walked out before anyone could ask more questions. In the parking lot, she sat behind the wheel and pressed both hands against her stomach. The baby was still there, still growing, still real. But on paper, on record, it didn't exist anymore. Just like her. 3,000 miles away, a file landed on Junesock's desk. His jet had touched down in Chicago 2 hours ago. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, just sat in the back of a black SUV while his team compiled everything they could find. And now he held the results in his hands. Subject, Naomi Carter. Status, active surveillance. Phone number deactivated, new device suspected but unconfirmed. Transfer request submitted to employer. Destination, Milwaukee satellite office. Apartment lease terminated, end of month. Hospital appointment canceled. That last line made him pause. His second-in-command stood near the window, watching carefully. He had worked for Junesock for 9 years, seen him negotiate with killers without blinking, seen him dismantle rivals with a single phone call. But he had never seen this expression before. Cold, controlled, and underneath, something that looked almost like pain. "The hospital records," said Junesock quietly. "Pull them." "Sir, medical files require—" "Did I ask what they require?" "No, sir." 20 minutes later, another document appeared on the table. Junsock read it slowly. Every word, every line. Patient declined follow-up. Reason given, no longer relevant. He set the paper down. She didn't just leave him. She didn't just change her number and request a transfer. She erased the proof of what they created. She tried to make their child disappear from records, from history, from any connection to him. As if burning that photo meant burning everything. As if walking away would protect anyone. Junsock stood and walked to the window. Chicago stretched out below him. Gray buildings, gray sky, gray streets wet with rain that never seemed to stop. Somewhere in this city, Naomi was packing boxes, believing she was doing the right thing, believing he would eventually forget her, move on, marry the park heiress, and build the empire his family designed for him. She had no idea. She had no idea that he canceled the engagement before she even burned that photo. She had no idea that he told his family about the pregnancy in a room full of people who wanted her erased. She had no idea that he was already here, in Chicago, 30 minutes from her apartment, watching, waiting, deciding how to reach a woman who was running from the only person who refused to let her go. His second-in-command cleared his throat. "Sir, what are your orders?" Junsock didn't turn around. "Find her new address, the Milwaukee one." And then? Silence stretched between them. When Junsock finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Then I wait." "Wait, sir?" "She's running because she thinks I won't choose her. She's wrong, but if I chase her now, if I corner her, she'll run harder, faster, farther." He turned to face his man. "So I wait. I let her settle, let her believe she's safe, and when the moment is right, when she's stopped looking over her shoulder," he paused, "I remind her that she was never invisible. Not to me. Not for one single day." 3 weeks. That's how long Naomi convinced herself she was free. Her new apartment in Milwaukee was smaller than the one in Chicago. 1 bedroom, thin walls, a kitchen so narrow she could touch both counters if she stretched her arms wide. The radiator groaned at night like an old man struggling to breathe. But it was quiet, and quiet was what she needed. No one here knew her name. No one here asked questions. She went to work at the satellite office, came home, heated soup from a can, and fell asleep before 9 most nights. The exhaustion was new. Her body felt heavier, her appetite disappeared some mornings and returned with a vengeance by afternoon. She told herself it was stress, adjustment, the cost of starting over. She didn't let herself think about what was actually growing inside her. Not yet. The routine helped. Wake up, shower, work, eat, sleep, repeat. If she kept moving, kept her hands busy and her mind occupied, she didn't have to think about Chicago, didn't have to think about the man she left behind, didn't have to wonder if he noticed she was gone. Of course he noticed. Men like Kang Jun-suk noticed everything. But noticing and caring were 2 different things, and powerful men didn't chase women who walked away. They moved on, found someone easier, someone who fit the life they were building. That's what Naomi told herself every night before she closed her eyes. He's already forgotten you. He's already planning his wedding. He's already erased you the same way you erased that photo. Some nights she almost believed it. But then came the envelope. It arrived on a Tuesday. Naomi had worked late, inventory issues at the satellite office that nobody else wanted to deal with. By the time she climbed the stairs to her apartment, her feet ached and her eyes burned. She almost stepped on it. A white envelope lying flat against her doormat. No name, no return address, no postage stamp. Someone had placed it there by hand. Naomi's heart stopped. She stood frozen in the hallway for a long moment, staring at that envelope like it might explode. Her neighbors were quiet. The building was still. Nothing moved except the flicker of a dying bulb at the end of the corridor. Slowly, she bent down and picked it up. It was light, thin. Whatever was inside couldn't be more than a single sheet. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, locked it behind her. Then she stood in her dark kitchen and tore the envelope open. A photograph. That's all it contained. But when Naomi saw what it was, her knees nearly gave out. The ultrasound. The same image she burned 3 weeks ago, the same tiny shape, the same grayscale heartbeat, the same proof she watched curl into ash over a candle flame. But here it was, in her hands, like it had never been destroyed at all. She flipped the photo over. On the back, written in handwriting she recognized, neat, precise, controlled, were 8 words. You can burn paper. You can't burn what's already been seen. Naomi's first instinct was fear. He found her. Somehow, despite everything, the new phone, the transfer, the canceled appointments, the erased records, he found her. She backed against the counter, clutching the photo so tight her knuckles turned white. Her eyes darted to the window, the door, the thin walls that suddenly felt like paper. Was he here? Outside? Watching? Her breath came fast, too fast. She forced herself to slow down, count to 10, remember how to think. Panic wouldn't help. Panic never helped. She survived worse than this, grown up with less than this, rebuilt her life from nothing more than stubbornness and spite. One photograph wasn't going to break her. But then the fear faded, and something else took its place. Anger. Hot. Sharp, rising from somewhere deep. Who did he think he was, sending messages like this, playing games when she was trying to move on? She left. She made a choice. She removed herself from his world so he could have the life his family designed for him. And this was how he responded? With mind games? With reminders that she could never truly escape? Naomi crumpled the photo in her fist, walked to the trash can, and threw it inside. Then she stood there, breathing hard, staring at the crumpled paper like it might crawl back out. 10 minutes passed. She didn't move. Then, slowly, quietly, she reached into the trash, pulled the photo out, smoothed the edges with trembling fingers. The image was wrinkled now, damaged, but the tiny shape was still visible. That quiet heartbeat, that proof of something real. She sat down on her kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, and stared at it until the sun came up. She told herself she kept it because she was tired, because her body hurt, because throwing it away again felt like too much effort. But that wasn't true, and she knew it. Somewhere, in a hotel room 15 minutes away, Kang Jun-sok sat in darkness. His phone rested on the table beside him. A single notification glowed on the screen, a message from the man he had stationed near her building. Envelope delivered. She took it inside. Lights went off. No movement since. Jun-sok read the message twice. Then he set the phone down and stared at the wall. He could go to her right now, knock on her door, demand answers, remind her that she belonged to him in ways neither of them fully understood. But he didn't. Not yet. Because Naomi wasn't a deal to be closed. She wasn't a rival to be crushed. She wasn't territory to be claimed. She was the woman carrying his child. And if he pushed too hard, if he cornered her before she was ready, she would run again, faster, farther, to places even his network couldn't reach. So he waited, watched, let her sit with that photograph all night. Let her remember what they had. Let her realize, on her own terms, that some things couldn't be burned away. The next morning, Naomi went to work like nothing happened, but she kept the photo, folded it carefully into her wallet, right behind her driver's license. She told herself it meant nothing, but every time she opened that wallet, every time she saw that tiny shape pressed against plastic, she felt something crack inside her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Naomi didn't sleep well anymore. Every creak in the hallway made her sit up. Every car engine outside her window made her pulse jump. She checked the lock on her door 3 times before bed, sometimes 4. The envelope had changed something. She wasn't just hiding anymore. She was waiting. For what? She didn't know. But the feeling followed her everywhere, like someone standing just outside her vision, breathing quietly, watching. A week passed after the photo arrived. Then 2. Nothing else came. No more envelopes, no messages, no signs that anyone knew where she lived. Maybe it was a one-time thing, a final goodbye, his way of saying, I know what you did, but I'm letting you go. That's what Naomi told herself. That's what she needed to believe. On a Thursday morning, she woke up late. The nausea had been worse this week. Some mornings she barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach emptied itself. The pregnancy was progressing whether she acknowledged it or not. Her body was changing. Her breasts ached. She couldn't ignore it much longer. But today wasn't the day to deal with that. Today, she just needed to get to work without throwing up in her car. She grabbed her keys, her bag, her jacket, took a deep breath, opened her apartment door, and froze. A black sedan was parked across the street. Expensive, sleek, the kind of car that didn't belong in this neighborhood. And leaning against it, arms crossed, face unreadable, watching her with those dark eyes that saw everything, was Kang Sok. Naomi's heart slammed against her ribs. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at the man she had spent weeks trying to forget. He looked the same. Dark suit, perfect posture, that calm, controlled stillness that made powerful people nervous and ordinary people invisible. But there was something different in his expression, something she couldn't name. He didn't approach, didn't wave, didn't call out her name. He just waited, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew she would come to him eventually. Naomi's legs felt like concrete. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, go back inside, lock the door, call in sick to work, pretend she never saw him. But pride pushed her forward. She had spent her whole life refusing to be small, refusing to cower, refusing to let anyone, man, circumstance, or fear, make her feel less than she was. She wasn't about to start now. Her feet carried her down the steps, across the sidewalk, toward the man who had no business being in Milwaukee. She stopped 3 feet away from him, close enough to see the slight tension in his jaw, close enough to smell that cologne she used to bury her face in, close enough to feel the pull she had been trying to kill for weeks. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. You shouldn't be here. Sok studied her face like he was memorizing it all over again. And yet I am. I didn't ask you to come. You didn't have to. His voice was calm, soft, the same tone she remembered from late-night phone calls when the world was quiet and he spoke to her like she was the only person who existed. It made her angry. How dare he sound like that? How dare he stand here looking at her like nothing had changed, like she had burned his child's photo and run away without a word? What do you want, Sok? I want to understand. Understand what? He tilted his head slightly. Why you ran? Naomi laughed. It came out bitter, hollow, the sound of someone who had cried too much to have tears left. Why I ran? Are you serious? I've never been more serious. She shook her head. You were engaged. Your family announced it. The park heiress, the strategic marriage, the merger of empires. That engagement was canceled. When? Before you burned that photo. The words hit her like a slap. She stared at him, searching for a lie, a trick, some sign that he was playing games. But his face revealed nothing except quiet certainty. You're lying. I don't lie. Not to you. Not ever. Naomi's chest tightened. If he canceled the engagement before she burned the photo, before she ran, before she erased herself, then everything she did was for nothing. She destroyed that ultrasound for nothing. She disappeared for nothing. She spent 3 weeks sick with grief and guilt and exhaustion for absolutely nothing. The realization made her dizzy. Why didn't you tell me? You changed your number. You stopped answering. You vanished before I could explain. I heard them talking at the gala. They said what my family wanted them to say. They didn't know I had already refused. Jun-suk took a step closer. Naomi didn't move back. When you burned that photo, he said quietly, did you think I wouldn't feel it? The question cracked something open inside her. She had convinced herself he didn't care, that she was just a distraction, that the moment his family presented a better option, he would forget she ever existed. But here he was, standing in a Milwaukee side street, 3,000 miles from his empire, looking at her like she had wounded him in ways she didn't understand. I thought, her voice faltered, I thought I was making it easier for you. Easier? You think I need you to make my choices for me? I think powerful men always choose power. Then you don't know me at all. Before she could respond, another car pulled up. Black, official, men in suits stepping out with practiced efficiency. Naomi recognized the insignia on their jackets immediately. Kang family security. They weren't here for protection. They were here for retrieval. The lead man approached with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Kang, your father requests your return. The family has matters to discuss. Jun-suk didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on Naomi. I'm busy. Sir, with respect, I said I'm busy. The man hesitated, glanced at Naomi, back at Jun-suk. The engagement ceremony is 4 days. Your presence is required in Los Angeles. Naomi felt her stomach drop. 4 days. The engagement wasn't canceled, or maybe it was, and the family was pushing forward anyway. Either way, his world was pulling him back. The empire, the obligations, the life she could never be part of. She took a step away from him. You should go. Jun-suk's expression darkened. Naomi, I mean it. Go back to your family. Handle your business. Forget you ever came here. I'm not leaving. You don't have a choice. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. I always have a choice. His voice dropped low, intense. The voice of a man who commanded armies and crushed rivals without raising his hand. And I choose you. His family just sent men to retrieve him. They're still pushing the engagement, still trying to pull him back. But Jun-suk isn't moving. What he does next will make his own family regret ever crossing him. Stay. This is the moment everything changes. If you're watching this far without subscribing, you're missing the best part. Hit that button now. The street went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the dangerous kind, the kind that comes right before something breaks. 3 men from Kang family security stood in a loose formation near their vehicle. Professional, patient, they had done this before, retrieved wayward family members, handled sensitive situations, cleaned up messes that powerful people didn't want to explain. But they had never handled Kang Jun-suk. Not like this. Not when he was standing in front of a woman they were supposed to pretend didn't exist. The lead man, tall, gray at the temples, a scar running along his jawline, stepped forward with practiced diplomacy. Mr. Kang, your father understands this situation is complicated, but the Park family arrives in Los Angeles tomorrow. The ceremony preparations are already underway. Your absence creates difficulties. He spoke like he was reading from a script, careful words designed to sound reasonable while delivering an ultimatum. Jun-suk didn't blink. Difficulties for whom? For the family, sir, for the alliance, for everything your father has built. And what about what I'm building? The man hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Naomi, quick, dismissive, like she was furniture that had somehow wandered into the frame. Sir, with respect, this woman is not careful. One word. Soft. Almost gentle. But the temperature on that street dropped 10 degrees. The security lead stopped mid-sentence. His partners shifted their weight. Something in Junsock's voice made experienced men reconsider their next move. Naomi watched the exchange with her heart pounding against her ribs. She had seen powerful people before. Her years working logistics near O'Hare brought her into contact with executives, politicians, men who controlled budgets larger than some countries. But this was different. Junsock wasn't performing power. He wasn't raising his voice or puffing his chest or making threats to prove a point. He simply existed in a space where his authority was absolute. And everyone around him, including men trained to handle violence, knew it. The lead man tried again. Mr. Kang, your father sent us with specific instructions. We're to escort you back to Los Angeles immediately. The jet is waiting at the airfield. And if I refuse? A pause. Sir? You heard me. What happens if I refuse? The man's jaw tightened. This wasn't a scenario they had prepared for. In their world, family orders weren't questioned. Sons didn't defy fathers. Heirs didn't walk away from arranged marriages for women who lived in one-bedroom apartments in Milwaukee. Your father would be disappointed. My father has been disappointed in me since the day I started thinking for myself. His feelings don't concern me. Junsock's voice remained level, calm, like he was discussing the weather instead of dismantling a 3-year alliance with a single conversation. What concerns me is the woman standing behind me, and what happens to anyone who thinks they can make her disappear. Naomi's breath caught. He wasn't just refusing to leave. He was drawing a line. In front of his family's own men, in front of witnesses who would report every word back to Los Angeles. He was declaring out loud, in daylight, with no room for interpretation, that she mattered more than their plans. Part of her wanted to tell him to stop, go back, handle his business. She had survived alone before. She could do it again. But another part, the part she had been trying to silence for weeks, felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Something that felt like belonging. The lead man exchanged glances with his partners. They had options. They could insist, apply pressure, remind Junsock of obligations and consequences. But they also knew the man standing in front of them. They knew what he was capable of. They knew that crossing him didn't end with an argument. It ended with disappearances, restructured alliances, careers destroyed without a single raised voice. The lead man made his choice. I'll inform your father of your decision. You do that. He won't be pleased. He rarely is. The man pulled out his phone, started to dial. Junsock's voice cut through the air like a blade. I wouldn't make that call. Sir? Not here, not in front of her. You want to report to my father, do it from the car, do it from the airport, do it from Los Angeles, but you do not stand on this street and discuss family business where she can hear. It wasn't a request. It was a command delivered with the kind of quiet authority that made people obey without understanding why. The man lowered his phone, nodded once, turned back toward the vehicle. His partners followed without a word. 30 seconds later, the black car pulled away from the curb and disappeared around the corner. And just like that, Kang family security retreated, defeated by a man who never raised his voice. The street fell silent again. Naomi stood frozen, trying to process what she had just witnessed. A man had chosen her over his empire, in front of witnesses, with consequences he couldn't possibly predict. She wanted to ask why, wanted to demand explanations, wanted to understand how someone like him could throw away everything for someone like her. But before she could speak, Junsock turned to face her. His expression had softened, just slightly, just enough for her to see the man underneath the mask. "You were about to tell me to leave?" "I was." "Why didn't you?" Naomi swallowed hard. The honest answer scared her more than his family ever could. "Because I'm tired of running from the only person who ever made me feel seen." Junseok studied her face for a long moment. Then he did something she didn't expect. He smiled. Not a smirk, not the controlled expression he wore in business meetings. A real smile. Small, quiet, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look almost human. "Then stop running. It's not that simple. Nothing about us has ever been simple. That doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for." Naomi felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had spent so long convincing herself she didn't deserve this, didn't deserve him, didn't deserve the life growing inside her. But here he was, standing in a Milwaukee side street, choosing her over everything. And for the first time in weeks, she let herself believe it might be real. "Your family won't stop," she said softly. "They'll keep coming, keep pushing, keep trying to pull you back. Let them try." "And the engagement?" "Was never going to happen, not after I met you." She shook her head. "You barely knew me then." "I knew enough." What could you possibly have known? Junseok stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her skin. "I knew that for the first time in my life, I wanted something that had nothing to do with power." Naomi closed her eyes. The weight of the past 3 weeks pressed down on her. The fear, the guilt, the loneliness, the desperate hope she kept trying to kill. When she opened her eyes again, she made a decision. 3 words that changed everything. "I'm keeping it." Junseok went still. "The baby," she continued, her voice stronger now. "I'm keeping it, whether you're here or not, whether your family accepts it or not. This child is mine, and I'm not running anymore." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Junseok reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, the hand of a man who had made his choice and refused to look back. "Good," he said quietly, "because I'm not going anywhere either." Los Angeles. The Kang family estate. Midnight. Kang Min-jun stood at the window of his private study, watching the city lights flicker below like scattered embers. His hands were clasped behind his back. His jaw was tight. His breathing was controlled, the kind of discipline that came from 50 years of swallowing rage and turning it into action. Behind him, his wife Soo-yeon sat in a leather chair. Her face was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that meant she was already 3 steps ahead. The security team had returned from Milwaukee 2 hours ago. Their report was brief, devastating. Junseok refused to return. He dismissed them in front of the woman. He made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that anyone who threatened her would answer to him personally. And then he stayed. With her. In that pathetic apartment. While the Park family waited in Seoul for an engagement that was falling apart. Min-jun finally spoke. "He thinks he can humiliate us and walk away." His voice was low, dangerous. The voice of a man who had crushed rivals, survived federal investigations, and built an empire from nothing. "He thinks love makes him untouchable." Soo-yeon didn't respond immediately. She was studying her nails like they contained the answers to questions no one had asked yet. "He's not thinking about love," she said finally. "He's thinking about legacy. His own legacy, one that doesn't include us. That woman has poisoned him." "No," Soo-yeon looked up. "That woman has given him something to fight for, something outside our control. That's far more dangerous than poison." The 2 uncles entered without knocking. They had been summoned the moment the security team landed. Both men looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from watching carefully constructed plans collapse in real time. The older uncle, Kang Dae-ho, spoke first. The Park family is demanding answers. Ji-yeon's father called twice. He's threatening to pull out of the shipping alliance if we don't resolve it within 48 hours. Then we resolve it, Min-jun said coldly. How? Jun-sok won't answer his phone. He's cut off communication with everyone except his personal security detail. And even they're reporting directly to him now, not us. The younger uncle, Kang Tae-min, shook his head. We underestimated him. We treated him like a piece on our board. But he's been building his own board for years. His personal holdings alone. I know what his holdings are, Min-jun snapped. I funded most of them. You funded the foundation. He built everything else without telling us. Silence filled the room. The truth hung in the air like smoke. Jun-sok wasn't a rebellious son throwing a tantrum. He was a strategist who had quietly positioned himself for independence. And now, with a woman and a child as his anchor, he had no reason to come back. Soo-yeon stood slowly. We're approaching this wrong. All three men turned to look at her. Jun-sok won't respond to pressure. We've seen that. He's too disciplined, too patient, too willing to burn bridges. Then what do you suggest? Min-jun demanded. Soo-yeon walked to the window and stood beside her husband. We don't target him, we target her. The room went still. Not violence, she continued quickly, too crude, too traceable, and Jun-sok would never forgive it. He'd become our enemy permanently. Then what? Information. She turned to face them. Every person has a past. Every person has things they've hidden, things they've buried, things that would destroy them if the right people found out. You want to dig into her background? I already have. Soo-yeon walked to her chair and retrieved a thin folder that had been resting beneath her purse. Naomi Carter, 31 years old, born on the south side of Chicago, raised by a single mother after her father went to prison for armed robbery when she was 7. She flipped a page. Family declared bankruptcy when she was 15. She worked 2 jobs through high school just to keep the lights on. At 18, she was arrested for assault, charges later reduced and sealed. Another page. Her mother died 3 years ago. No siblings, no close relatives, no safety net. Just a woman who clawed her way out of poverty through sheer stubbornness. Min-jun studied the file. This is supposed to scare her? A difficult childhood? A sealed record? It's supposed to make her feel unworthy, Soo-yeon said softly. It's supposed to remind her, in detail, that she doesn't belong in our world, that no matter how much Jun-sok claims to want her, she will always be the woman with the criminal father and the bankruptcy and the sealed assault charge. She closed the folder. We don't threaten her, we educate her. We show her exactly who she is compared to who we are, and we let her own shame do the rest. Daeho frowned. And if she doesn't leave? Then we show Jun-sok. He won't care. Maybe not, but if we frame it correctly, if we make it look like she hid these things from him deliberately, we plant doubt. We make him wonder what else she's hiding. Tae-min shook his head. Jun-sok isn't stupid. He'll see through it. Perhaps, but even suspicion creates distance. Even a small crack can become a canyon if you apply pressure at the right moment. Min-jun took the folder from his wife. He read through it slowly, every page, every detail. When he finished, his expression had shifted. The rage was still there, but now it was focused, directed, weaponized. Send the first message tomorrow. Anonymous, no return address, just the documents. To her? To her workplace. Let her know we can reach her anywhere. Let her understand that disappearing didn't protect her. It just gave us time to gather ammunition. Soo-yeon nodded. And if she still doesn't leave? Min-jun's voice dropped to ice. Then we send the same documents to June Sok, with a note suggesting she deliberately concealed her past to trap him. That's a lie. Truth doesn't matter. Perception does. And if we can make him doubt her, even for a moment, the bond breaks. She runs, he returns. Order is restored. The plan was set. Within hours, a courier was dispatched to Milwaukee. Inside a plain white envelope, 3 documents: Naomi's father's criminal record, her family's bankruptcy filing, her sealed juvenile arrest, now unsealed through channels that didn't officially exist, and a handwritten note with 8 words. He doesn't know who you really are. The envelope arrived at Naomi's workplace the next afternoon. She found it sitting on her desk when she returned from lunch. No postage, no name, just plain white paper that felt heavier than it should. She opened it alone, read every page, and felt her entire world tilt sideways. They found her. Not just June Sok, his family. They dug into her past, found the things she buried, the things she never told anyone. Not her coworkers, not her friends, not even the man who claimed to want her forever. And now they were using it against her. Naomi sat at her desk for a long time. The documents spread in front of her like evidence at a trial. Her father's mugshot stared up at her. A man she barely remembered. A man who chose a robbery over his own daughter. The bankruptcy papers brought back memories she had spent years trying to forget. Her mother crying at the kitchen table, the power getting shut off, the neighbors whispering, and the assault charge. That was the one that made her stomach turn. She was 18. A man twice her size had cornered her outside a gas station. She fought back, broke his nose, ended up in handcuffs while he walked away with a warning. The charges were reduced. The record was sealed. She was supposed to be safe from that night forever. But the Kang family didn't believe in sealed records. The note at the bottom burned into her brain. He doesn't know who you really are. They were right. June Sok didn't know. She had never told him about her father, never mentioned the bankruptcy, never explained why she flinched when men raised their voices. She kept those parts of herself locked away because she was ashamed, because she believed, deep down, that if anyone saw the full picture, they would realize she wasn't worth the trouble. And now his family was using that belief as a weapon. Naomi gathered the documents slowly. Her hands were shaking. But something else was rising inside her, too. Something that felt less like fear and more like fire. They wanted her to run. They wanted her to disappear again. They wanted her to believe she was too broken for their precious son. But Naomi Carter didn't survive poverty, loss, and a sealed assault charge by being easy to break. She survived by fighting. And if the Kang family wanted a war, she would give them one. Naomi didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with the documents spread in front of her like pieces of a puzzle she never wanted to solve. Her father's mugshot, the bankruptcy filing, the sealed assault record that wasn't sealed anymore. Every page told a story she had spent years trying to outrun, and now it was all here in black and white, ready to destroy everything. The Kang family thought this would break her. They thought she would read these pages, feel the shame crawl up her spine, and disappear before June Sok ever found out. They were half right. The shame was there. It always had been. Buried deep, locked away in a part of herself she never showed anyone. But shame wasn't the only thing inside her. Something else was there too. Something harder, something that had kept her alive through poverty and loss, and nights when she didn't know where her next meal would come from. By morning, Naomi had made a decision. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. She was going to do the one thing the Kang family never expected. She was going to tell June Sok everything herself. He arrived at her apartment that evening. She'd texted him 3 words: "We need to talk." No explanation, no context, just a summons that he answered without question. When she opened the door, he stood in the hallway looking exactly the same as always. Dark coat, controlled expression, those eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. But something in his posture shifted when he saw her face. What happened? Naomi stepped aside to let him in. Close the door. The documents were still on the kitchen table. She had arranged them in order. Father's record first, bankruptcy second, assault charge last. A timeline of trauma laid out like a confession. Junseok walked to the table slowly. He didn't sit, didn't speak, just stood there looking down at the papers like they might bite. "Your family sent these," Naomi said quietly, "to my workplace, yesterday." His jaw tightened. "What are they?" "My past, the parts I never told you about." She moved to stand across from him. The table between them felt like a courtroom. "Read them." Junseok picked up the first document. His father's mugshot stared back at him. Armed robbery, 10 years in prison, released when Naomi was 17, died of a heart attack 6 months later. He set it down, picked up the second. Bankruptcy filing. Naomi's mother listed as primary debtor. The family home seized, credit destroyed, a spiral that took years to climb out of. He set that down too. Picked up third. Assault charge. Naomi Carter, age 18. Victim claimed she attacked him unprovoked. Naomi's statement said he cornered her outside a gas station, tried to grab her, she defended herself. Charges reduced, record sealed. Until now. Junseok read every page. He took his time. His expression revealed nothing. When he finished, he set the final document down and looked at her. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. "This is what you were hiding?" Naomi's throat tightened. "I wasn't hiding it. I just never found the right time to tell you." "There's a difference?" "Yes. Hiding means I was trying to deceive you. This was just shame. The kind that doesn't know how to speak." Junseok didn't move. "Your father was a criminal." "Yes." "Your family lost everything." "Yes." "You were arrested for assault." "I defended myself against a man who tried to hurt me. The system called it assault because I fought back harder than he expected." Her voice cracked on that last sentence. The memory was still there, sharp and raw. The gas station lights, the smell of diesel, the man's hands grabbing at her jacket, the way her fist connected with his face before she even realized she was swinging. She had never felt more afraid in her life. And then they put her in handcuffs. Junseok was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something she didn't expect. He laughed. Softly, almost gently, the kind of sound that came from somewhere deep. Not mockery, but something closer to recognition. "Naomi." She looked up. "I run a criminal empire." The words hung in the air. "I have ordered things that would put me in prison for the rest of my life. I have made decisions that destroyed families, ended careers, and erased people from existence." He stepped around the table, closer to her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Did you really think a sealed juvenile record would scare me?" Naomi felt her chest constrict. "I thought, when you saw who I really was, where I came from, you thought I would leave?" "Everyone else did." The words came out before she could stop them. Raw, honest. The confession of a woman who had been abandoned so many times she learned to leave first. "My father left. My mother died. Every friend I ever had eventually decided I was too much trouble, too complicated, too broken." She looked away. "I figured it was only a matter of time before you realized the same thing." Junseok reached out. His hand caught her chin gently, turned her face back toward him. "Look at me." She did. His expression had changed. The controlled mask was gone. In its place was something she had only seen glimpses of: vulnerability, tenderness, the man underneath the empire. "You didn't fall for a good man. You fell for a monster who chose you. Stop trying to save me from yourself." Naomi felt tears building behind her eyes. She had spent so long believing she wasn't enough, that her past defined her future, that the scars she carried made her unworthy of love. And here was a man who carried scars far deeper than hers, who had done things she couldn't imagine, telling her that none of it mattered. That he saw her, all of her, and he wasn't leaving. "Your family sent these documents to break us apart," she whispered. "I know. They want me to disappear." "I know. They'll keep coming, keep digging, keep finding ways to make me feel like I don't belong in your world." June Sock's grip on her chin tightened, just slightly, just enough to make sure she heard every word. Let them try. And when they do, then they learn what happens when someone threatens what's mine. The word hit her like a wave. Mine. Not possession, not ownership. Belonging. The kind of belonging she had searched for her entire life. "I was going to leave," she admitted quietly. "When I got those documents, I almost packed a bag. Almost ran again." "What stopped you?" She thought about it. Really thought. "I realized something." "What?" "Running is easy. Staying when you think you don't deserve to stay, that's the fight no one tells you about." June Sock was silent for a moment. Then he pulled her toward him. Not roughly, not urgently, just steady, certain. His arms wrapped around her like a shield. "Then stay," he said into her hair. "Fight, and let me handle my family." "They won't stop." "Neither will I." Naomi closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she let herself breathe. Really breathe. The documents were still on the table. The threats were still real. The Kang family was still plotting in their Los Angeles fortress. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. Because she wasn't alone anymore. And that changed everything. Los Angeles. 1 week later. The Kang family estate had never felt this tense. Guards stood straighter, staff moved quieter, even the air seemed to hold its breath, like the entire building knew something was about to break. Kang Min-jun had called an emergency family meeting. All members, no exceptions. The message that accompanied the summons was brief. June Sock has requested to address the family. Attendance is mandatory. Requested, not demanded, not ordered. Requested. That single word made everyone nervous. Because Kang Jun Sock never requested anything. He simply acted. And when he chose words carefully, it meant he was planning something no one would see coming. The conference room filled slowly. Kang Min-jun sat up ahead of the table. His face was stone. His hands were folded. He hadn't slept well in days, not since the documents failed to drive Naomi away. Su-yun sat beside him, composed as always, but her eyes kept flicking toward the door, waiting. The two uncles took their usual seats. Neither spoke. Family advisors lined the walls. Lawyers, accountants, security chiefs, the people who made the Kang Empire function, all gathered to witness whatever was about to happen. At exactly 3 p.m., the door opened, and Kang Jun Sock walked in. He wasn't alone. Naomi stood beside him, 4 months pregnant, head high, back straight, wearing a simple black dress that made her look more powerful than any designer gown could. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't cowering. She was claiming her place. The room went silent. Su-yun's composure cracked just for a moment. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted. She hadn't expected this. None of them had. Kang Min-jun rose slowly from his chair. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice carried decades of authority, the kind of tone that made grown men apologize and powerful rivals reconsider. Jun Sock didn't flinch. "Sit down, father. We have business to discuss." The words landed like a slap. No one told Kang Min-jun to sit down, not in his own house, not in front of his own people. For a long moment, father and son stared at each other across the conference table. Two predators measuring the distance between them. Finally, slowly, Min-jun lowered himself back into his chair. The balance of power had shifted. Everyone in the room felt it. Jun-suk walked to the opposite end of the table. Naomi stayed at his side, close, united, a statement without words. "I called this meeting for one reason," Jun-suk began. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who had already decided the outcome. To make something clear. He looked around the room, made eye contact with every family member, every advisor, every guard. "This woman is carrying my child." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some had suspected, others hadn't known for certain. Now there was no doubt. There will be no engagement to the Park family. There will be no strategic marriage. There will be no arrangement made without my consent. Ever again. Min-jun's jaw tightened. "You would throw away everything we built for her?" "I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing what I build next. The Park Alliance alone is worth—" "I know what it's worth. I also know what it costs." Jun-suk reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim folder. He slid it across the table toward his father. "Open it." Min-jun hesitated. The folder sat between them like a loaded weapon. Finally, he opened it. Inside were documents, financial statements, asset reports, holdings that stretched across 3 continents. His face paled as he read. "These are my personal holdings, acquired over the past 12 years, quietly, carefully, without family funds or family oversight." Jun-suk let the information settle. "Commercial real estate in Manhattan, tech investments in Seoul, shipping interests in Singapore, private equity funds in London." He paused. "Combined value? $4.7 billion. The room went completely still. 4.7 billion. More than the family's collective holdings, more than anyone in that room had realized. Jun-suk had been building his own empire, in the shadows, right under their noses, for over a decade. "You think I need this family?" he said quietly. "You think I'm here because I have no choice?" He looked at his mother, then his uncles, then back at his father. "I'm here because I choose to be, because despite everything, despite the arranged marriages and the manipulation and the documents you sent to destroy the woman I love, I still believe this family can be something better." Soo-yeon found her voice. "If you have your own resources, why come back at all? Why not just walk away?" "Because walking away is easy. Changing things from inside is harder, and I've never chosen the easy path." He turned to face his mother directly. "You sent those documents to Naomi's workplace. You dug into her past. You tried to use her shame as a weapon against her." Soo-yeon's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened in her lap. "I did what I thought was necessary. You did what you always do. You tried to control something by destroying it." Jun-suk stepped closer to the table. "Here's what happens now. Naomi stays, the child stays. Anyone who threatens them, directly or indirectly, will be removed from this family's operations, permanently." Daeho leaned forward. "You can't just—" "You can, and I will." Jun-suk's voice dropped to ice. "You seem to forget who handles the overseas accounts, who manages the legitimate fronts, who has the relationships that keep this family out of federal prison." He let that sink in. "Without me, this empire collapses in 18 months, maybe less. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts." Min-jun stared at his son. For 50 years, he had controlled this family with an iron grip. He had survived wars, betrayals, investigations. He had never, not once, been outmaneuvered by his own blood. Until now. "You planned this," he said slowly, "for years. I planned for independence. I never planned to use it against you, but you forced my hand. By trying to protect this family's interests, By treating me like a piece on your board instead of a person with his own choices. Naomi had been silent through the entire exchange, but now she stepped forward. The room shifted. Eyes turned toward her. She wasn't supposed to speak. She wasn't supposed to matter. She was just the woman they were trying to remove. But she opened her mouth anyway. I didn't come here to ask for your approval. Her voice was steady, clear, the voice of someone who had survived too much to be intimidated by rich people in expensive suits. I came here so you could see me, really see me, not as a problem to solve or a threat to eliminate, as a person. She looked at Soo-yeon. You sent those documents to break me. You thought if I saw my own past laid out like evidence, I would run. A pause. But I've been running my whole life, from poverty, from shame, from men who thought they could take what they wanted, and I'm tired. She placed her hand on her stomach. This child will be born whether you accept it or not. I will raise this child whether you acknowledge it or not. And Jun-suk will be part of both our lives because he chose to be, not because you arranged it. She stepped back to Jun-suk's side. So you can keep fighting, keep scheming, keep trying to make me disappear, or you can accept that your son made a choice and start building something new. The room was silent. Soo-yeon looked at her son, then at Naomi, then back at her son. Something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but something that might become acceptance if given enough time. If you do this, she said quietly, you walk alone. Jun-suk didn't hesitate. I'm not alone. He took Naomi's hand. I never was. You just never bothered to look. Min-jun rose from his chair. The patriarch of the Kang family, a man who had broken rivals with a single phone call, stood face to face with the son who had just dismantled his authority. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Min-jun did something no one expected. He nodded. Just once. We'll discuss terms tomorrow. And he walked out. 6 months later, Northern California. The house sat on a quiet hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean. No gates, no guards at the entrance, just a winding driveway lined with oak trees and a view that stretched to the edge of the world. Naomi had chosen this place. Not Jun-suk, not his advisors, not any real estate agent trying to impress them with square footage and celebrity neighbors. She had stood on this hill 3 months ago, 8 months pregnant, feet swollen, back aching, and said 4 words. This feels like home. That was enough. The papers were signed within a week. Now she stood by the living room window, watching fog roll across the water like a slow-moving dream. Her daughter slept in a bassinet beside her. 3 weeks old, perfect. A tiny human with her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. They named her Hana. It meant one in Korean and flower in Japanese. But for Naomi, it meant something simpler. Beginning. The past 6 months had been a hurricane. After the family meeting in Los Angeles, everything changed. Min-jun didn't apologize. Men like him rarely did. But he stopped fighting, stopped scheming, started treating Naomi like a person instead of a problem. Soo-yeon was harder. She kept her distance for months, watched from the edges, studied Naomi like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't understand. But 3 weeks before Hana was born, she showed up at the house, unannounced. No security, no agenda, just a woman carrying a small box wrapped in silk. Inside was a hanbok, a traditional Korean dress sized for an infant. For the child, Soo-yeon said. No warmth, no apology, just an offering. Naomi accepted it without comment. Some bridges take years to build. She was willing to wait. The park engagement disappeared without fanfare. Gian married someone else, a tech executive from San Francisco who didn't carry the weight of a criminal empire. The shipping alliance was restructured. Different terms, different players. Junseok handled the negotiations himself. No arranged marriages required. The Kang family was still powerful, still dangerous, still operating in the shadows that most people would never see. But something had shifted. Junseok was no longer the obedient heir following orders. He was the architect now, and he was building something different. Footsteps behind her. Naomi turned as Junseok walked into the room. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, no suit, no tie, no armor. He looked tired, the good kind of tired, the kind that came from midnight feedings and early morning diaper changes and learning how to be a father, one clumsy moment at a time. Is she sleeping? Finally. He moved to stand beside her, looked down at his daughter with an expression Naomi still couldn't fully name. Wonder, fear, love so fierce it scared him. I didn't think I could feel like this. Like what? Like everything I built before doesn't matter compared to her. Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder. Do you regret it? Regret what? Any of it. Walking away from the engagement, fighting your family, choosing this life instead of the one they planned. Junseok was quiet for a moment. I regret that it took me so long to realize what mattered. He turned to face her. But I don't regret a single choice that led me here. Naomi looked up at him. She thought about the night she burned that ultrasound photo, the fear, the shame, the absolute certainty that she wasn't worth fighting for. She had been so sure that disappearing was the answer, so convinced that running would protect everyone, including herself. Do you ever think about that night? The photo? Which part? All of it. The burning, the running, the mess I made trying to save you from myself. Junseok reached into his pocket. He pulled out something small, worn, folded so many times the creases had become permanent. The ultrasound photo. Not a copy. The original. Naomi's breath caught. How? I told you, nothing around me happens without being seen. He handed it to her. The edges were burned, half the image was ash, but the tiny shape, the quiet heartbeat, was still visible. I kept it, he said. After you burned it, after you ran, I had someone retrieve the pieces. Why? Because I needed proof that she was real, that what we had was real, even when you were trying to erase it. Naomi held the damaged photo with trembling hands. She had spent so much energy destroying evidence of her worth, convinced that if she removed herself from the picture, everyone would be better off. But he had kept it, preserved it, carried it like a promise. I'm sorry, she whispered, for running, for doubting, for believing the worst about us. Don't be. But Naomi? He lifted her chin, made her look at him. Running is easy. Staying when you think you don't deserve to stay, that's the fight no one tells you about. You stayed. That's all that matters. The baby stirred. A small sound. Not quite crying, just the soft complaint of someone adjusting to existence. Naomi moved to the bassinet and lifted Hannah gently, felt that warm weight settle against her chest. Her daughter, her future, proof that she had survived everything life threw at her and come out the other side holding something precious. Junseok watched them both with that quiet intensity she had fallen in love with. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking about how wrong my family was. About what? About you not belonging in my world. He stepped closer, wrapped his arms around both of them. You were the world I was looking for. I just didn't know it until you tried to leave. Outside, the fog was lifting. Sunlight began to break through the gray, warm, golden, the kind of light that made everything look new. Naomi thought about her mother, about the woman who worked 3 jobs and never complained, who told her daughter every single day that she was worth more than the circumstances she was born into. "I wish she could have met Hannah," Naomi said softly. "She would have been proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so." The next few months brought more changes. June Sock restructured his holdings, moved the family's operations toward legitimate business. It would take years, maybe decades, to untangle completely, but he had started. Naomi went back to school, part-time, online classes and business administration. She wasn't content to just be someone's partner. She wanted to build something of her own. The family visited occasionally, awkward dinners, careful conversations, progress measured in small moments instead of grand gestures. And Hannah grew. First smile, first laugh, first time she grabbed her father's finger and refused to let go. One evening, Naomi found June Sock in his study. He was staring at a photograph on his desk. Not the ultrasound this time, a new photo, taken last week. The 3 of them, Naomi, June Sock, Hannah, standing on the beach below their house, wind in their hair, waves crashing behind them. A family. "You kept this one, too," she said. "I keep everything that matters." She sat on the edge of his desk. "Do you remember what you said to me back in Milwaukee when your family's men came to take you back?" "I said a lot of things." "You said you choose me." He looked up at her. "I did." "And now?" He reached for her hand, pulled her closer. "Now I choose you again. Tomorrow I'll choose you again. Every day until there are no more days left." Naomi leaned down and kissed him. Soft, certain. The kiss of a woman who had finally stopped running. "I choose you too," she whispered against his lips. "Every day, no matter what comes." And in that quiet house on the California coast, 2 people who were never supposed to meet built something that no one could destroy. Not family pressure, not shame, not fear. Just love. The kind that survives fire. She burned the baby scan because she thought she didn't belong in his world. What she didn't know, she was the only world that ever mattered to him. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever believed you weren't worth fighting for, I need you to hear something. You are. You always were. Sometimes the people who feel most invisible are the ones who matter most, and the ones who run the hardest are the ones who deserve to be chased. So she burned the baby photo because she thought she didn't belong in his world. What the mafia boss didn't know, he kept the ashes, because real love doesn't disappear just because you try to destroy the evidence. If you're still watching, if you stayed until the very end, then you understand what the story was really about. It was never just about mafia power or billionaire romance. It was about choosing yourself, fighting for yourself, staying when everything inside you screams to run. So here's my ask. If this story made you feel something, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because there are more stories like this coming. Stories about people who think they're not enough. People who discover they are. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Because the next story, it's even more intense. Thanks for staying until the end. You're part of this community now. Welcome to Tales by Wave.